Is something brewing behind the scenes for one of my favorite cryptocurrencies? I'm talking about billions of dollars flooding its ecosystem throughout the rest of this year, putting it in the perfect position to rocket into the next bull run. Well, we have the research, and what about a major acquisition? But are you guys going to listen in? Well, perk up those ears, because it's time for Chico Crypto. If you didn't realize, decarbonizing Bitcoin mining is going to be the most valuable thing in this industry due to the rising hash rate of BTC. Over the past 3 years, the hash rate has exploded from 100 million terahashes to a whopping 375 million today, even though we have went through a brutal bear market where the price crashed and burned. And this hash rate, don't expect it to slow down. With the introduction of Ordinals and BRC20 assets on Bitcoin, the miners have a new source of revenue besides just mining blocks. They are also now making bank on transaction fees due to the demand for the block space. As we can see, transaction fees pre-Ordinals was averaging about 250,000 per day. At the peak of the Ordinal hype, this was about 10 million per day. But even with the initial hype gone, this number is still way up, over 2 million per day, or an 8x increase from the pre-Ordinal days. BRC20s and Ordinals are still in their infancy. Just wait until this ecosystem develops, with bridges over to Ethereum, swappers like Uniswap, and perpetual dexes like GMX. This is coming, and I would expect it to happen by the end of the year. This means higher transaction fees, which means more miners jumping on board to capture that value, which means a higher hash rate, which means the need for sustainable mining becoming that more important. Why is sustainable mining going to become a hot topic? Well, regulators across the globe are looking to heavily tax miners who aren't mining sustainably. For example, the United States. Bitcoin miners in the US got lucky and dodged a new tax on their operations. From the Barron's article on this, it says, Congress draft debt ceiling bill doesn't include a heavy crypto tax that the White House had proposed. It would have imposed an excise tax on crypto miners equal to 30% the cost of electricity they use. Yeah, the tax on BTC and crypto miners was scraped, but it isn't dead. From the article, Isaac Boltansky, head of policy research at BTIG, said, any suggestion that the industry is safe from future taxation efforts just because the Dame tax was excluded from the debt ceiling deal is detached from reality. Yes, it didn't come today, but it might come tomorrow, and the smart miners and smart crypto companies are preparing for the inevitable, the government taxing dirty Bitcoin mining, aka mining that doesn't come from sustainable sources. So, there are some mining companies that are extremely worried about the proposed crypto tax, and some that aren't. As we can see from the Barron's article, it says, such a tax would have cut severely into the profits of miners such as Marathon Digital Holdings and Riot Platforms. Now, why did they mention Riot Platforms? Well, just last month, the New York Times put out an article, The Real World Cost of the Digital Race for Bitcoin, where they identified the 34 most dirty operations, putting immense pressure on power grids around them. And guess who was identified as the dirtiest? Riot, where 96% of their operations were done with fossil fuels, resulting in almost 2 million tons of CO2 emissions per year. The New York Times, of course, tweeted their article, but Riot jumped in to say BTC mining has 0 carbon emissions. Well, guess who decided to put them on the spot? The CEO of Energy Web, Jesse Morris. He jumped in and said, right. Well, if you'd like to decarbonize the electricity powering your mining units and prove it to the public, give us a ping. That's because Energy Web just last week publicly launched a solution for sustainably mining Bitcoin alongside 5 mining firms. This is called Green Proofs for Bitcoin, or GP4BTC. From the launch article, we can see it says, GP4BTC will provide transparency into the decarbonization efforts of Bitcoin miners and hosting companies. As part of the solution, certifications will be issued to Bitcoin miners based on their clean energy use and contributions to grid stability via demand response. One of the 5 miners publicly launching this with Energy Web we can see is Hive Blockchain Technologies. Hive, they weren't mentioned in that New York Times article because they are sticking to a sustainable path to mining Bitcoin and mine sustainably, now provable, with GP4BTC. And any new legislation punishing dirty miners with taxes, it doesn't bother them a bit. Now, I'm sure many of you were drawn to this video because I said billions could be flooding a certain crypto's ecosystem soon. Well, that crypto is Energy Web, and let me explain what's about to happen. Back in 2020, when Energy Web was carving out their strategic partners, they joined hands with a certain one. From this July 2020 post, we can see they partnered with the grid operator of Uruguay, the UTE. Together, they would pursue blockchain-based solutions that would enable UTE to innovate and evolve under a variety of potential future scenarios. And as part of the partnership, UTE will become an Energy Web member and host an EW chain validator node. Well, this was no BS. January of last year, it was announced Uruguay's UTE and the Ministry of Industry, Energy and Mining had developed a renewable energy certification system leveraging the Energy Web decentralized operating system. And we can see from the release it says, the service will be made available to an increasing number of customers through June 2022. Well, for the longest time, we had no idea what was being built, but in February of this year, the Uruguayan government presented it. It was the SCER platform, their renewable energy certification system. And they even explained in the presentation that this was built on Energy Web chain. Seems to be pretty important when you have an entire country building its energy certification platform on Energy Web. But what about those billions? Where are they coming from? Well, if you didn't hear the news from a couple days ago, Tether, even though I don't like them, they do have billions, announced they were investing some of those billions into an unnamed company to launch mining operations within the country of Uruguay, of who Energy Web is tight with. And if we go to Tether's release on this, it's all about sustainable Bitcoin mining and using sustainable sources. I'm almost 100% sure Energy Web is involved with this somehow. But you really start to see the importance when you see this. Back in 2022, when the Uruguay and Energy Noobs was dripping out, guess who retweeted the partnership with probably nothing? Ed Hess. And guess who retweeted Ed? Gavin Wood of Polkadot. They knew something big was brewing with this Uruguay partnership, but something even bigger is coming, and it comes from the mouth of Ed with Gavin on stage, speaking about Energy Web. Let's listen in.
And a relay chain is essentially where the trust is created. That's where the consensus is happening. And then the parachains that's where the functionality is happening. So all those country chains, Australia, California, Germany, they can hook into the chain and lend the security from there, the trust. But they can keep their own sovereignty with their own governance. They can do their own upgrades and so forth. And that's the upgrade we're doing, where we create essentially a copy of Polkadot for the energy sector. And then down the road, Gav still has to build a bit more tech, a bit more upgrading. And then down the road, the vision is that Polkadot actually and this chain will merge. So essentially merge like companies. So we have seen in the crypto space, we have seen a lot of networks that are splitting. So And we already starting to see mergers where ecosystems buy ecosystems. One token is buying the other one, and the chains are merging.
Did you hear it? Energy Web and Polkadot will eventually merge together. DOT is going to purchase EWT eventually. Do you know what that will do to the EWT price? Moon it with billions. Cheers. I'll see you next time.